Senator Hassan, you're recognized for your questions.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair and Ranking Member Paul, for holding this hearing. And to our witnesses, thank you all for your insights and the important work that you do. Look, my office, like I think all of our offices, frequently hears from constituents about the challenges they are facing to fill prescriptions and purchase over-the-counter medications that their families use on a daily basis. So I'm really glad we're holding this hearing. I want to start with a question to you, Dr. Schumann. In 2017, the FDA reported that 80% of active ingredients used in medicines were manufactured in China and India. This manufacturing monopoly is one of the root causes of the drug shortage, and relying on China for active ingredients is a national security and public health risk. So, Dr. Schumann, how can the United States shore up domestic drug manufacturing and better protect our supply chains from potential conflicts with China?
Thank you for your question, and thank you for your advocacy on this issue. I completely agree with you that this is a national security concern. It is something that we need to deal with. I think incentivizing production on American soil is critical. The devil's, of course, in the details of what that looks like, but I would consider drug manufacturing to be critical infrastructure. If we have crumbling bridges, we fix them. If we don't have medications that we need, we build the factories and we incentivize companies, whether it's private partner or public-private partnerships or other types of arrangements, to make the critical drugs that are quite expensive to make on American soil.
Thank you. Ms. Fox, I want to turn to you. The FDA maintains a list of essential medications and medical devices that's intended to inform which supply chains are most critical to support. That's a really important baseline. However, some medications like Adderall and some children's medicines aren't on the FDA's essential medicines list. Many Americans need these medications, and the FDA and other entities need to do a better job of managing these particular supply chains, as you discussed in your testimony. What can the FDA and other organizations do to identify and then prioritize addressing supply chain vulnerabilities for drugs that are not on the essential medicines list?
Thank you so much for that question. We really do need to address transparency. We absolutely need to get more information about the true vulnerabilities, exactly where we are missing information, where the key starting materials are coming from. And we can't focus our efforts on every drug. And so with limited resources, we need to really drill down to which products are most vulnerable. FDA's essential medicines list was actually not intended to identify those that are most vulnerable. It was really kind of targeted towards, taking care of patients in an acute pandemic, honestly. And so that list, if we really do need to revise it and identify those items that are most critically relying on products that we actually can't get.
Okay, thank you. To Ms. Raghavendran, the U.S. Pharmacopoeia Medicine Supply Map collects and analyzes data from across the world to pinpoint drug manufacturing supply chain vulnerabilities. This map can help prevent shortages and ensure quality. How could FDA use the medicine supply map or similar data to better address vulnerabilities in the medical supply chain?
Senator, thank you for the question. We see many applications of data intelligence like the medicine supply map. We think there's value not just to the FDA, but also within the private sector. On a day-to-day basis, it is in the private sector that the supply chain is managed, and it's the stakeholders in the private sector that are responsible for getting medicines to patients when they need it. The FDA drug shortages team also uses information such as this to manage drug shortages. And the ways you can use it, so for example, if you're a manufacturer, it would be great to know that your competitor might have a drug shortage, because then you can ramp up your production to meet that demand. On the other end of the spectrum, if you're a hospital, it's really good to know what are the critical medicines that are going to, likely have a shortage, because then you can plan for it. You can either contract with additional suppliers, and if the shortage were actually to happen, you have time to prepare. I mean, Dr. Schumann and Dr. Fox can talk about how when the shortage happens, hospital staff are scrambling to figure out alternate treatment protocols and so forth.
Right, and I appreciate that hospitals and private manufacturers may want to use this data, but I also think it's really essential that the FDA and the United States government use this data too, so it can be looking at the whole map, not just an individual region's particular experience, and really begin to plan and make sure, again, that we're treating this as the critical kind of infrastructure that it is. Quickly, in my remaining time, I want to start with a question to Ms. Fox and Dr. Schumann, because earlier this month, I introduced a bill with Ranking Member Paul to get more generic drugs to market faster. Under current law, FDA may reject an application for a generic drug without telling the generic drug manufacturer what part of the formula was wrong, which can ultimately lead to really time-consuming delays. By simply telling a generic drug manufacturer what adjustments they need to make, our bipartisan bill would help improve the generic market approval process and lower drug prices overall. Are there other aspects of FDA's generic approval process that could be improved and help more generics make it to the market in a more timely way? And we'll start with you, Ms. Fox.
Thank you for that question. I think when we think about the generic drug approval process, we know that FDA does prioritize products that are in shortage, and so those do get bumped up to the top of the list, which is great. But I think it's also really important to understand which companies are set to do a good job, which companies are investing in their quality manufacturing, and those products should potentially also get priority. Why should we approve a product from a factory that is old and crumbling and is likely to have all of its medicines recalled because they're contaminated?
Well, and also, why should we slow a company down by not telling them where they're off? Dr. Schumann, quickly, would you like to comment on that process as well?
I completely agree. I will say that as an institution, we have no idea what that quality looks like. And if legislation can clarify for buyers, either hospitals or GPOs or others, whether or not the product we're buying is of higher quality and is thus more reliable, it would go a long way. And I would argue that the market would pay more for that if we were able to clarify that we're paying for a higher quality product.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Chair.